Hello, my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach, and welcome back to my crochet channel. Now, today's video, I'm going to show you how to crochet the pumpkin patch scrubby. And I'm calling it that because we're using a technique that is a 2 triple cluster in order to form these little bumps and set against a green background. Looks like a pumpkin patch. I just love the way that it looks. Super fun and easy to make. Now, this one is made with a scrubby yarn, and this one is made with cotton. This one came out a little bit wider, where this one came out as a square. And that's just the nature of the 2 different types of yarn that we used. This is the Yarn Bee Scrub-ology Scrub It, and this is 2 strands of cotton held together. And what that does is it gives you 2 different options on this pattern. You can make it just as a scrubby, or you can make it in cotton, and it can be used as a hot pad or pot holder because it's 2 strands held together, super thick and super safe. This one measures about 8 by 8 inches, and you can see that this one ended up about 8.5 by about 7.5. So there's a little bit of difference in the way that they're situated just because of the yarn. The pattern is worked the same for both yarns. You're just getting separate results because of this being a bulky yarn and this being 2 strands of cotton held together. This ends up being just a little bit thicker than this, but it still works great, and this also makes a great scrubby if you don't want to use this type of yarn. So I thought it would be fun to do both options. That way, if you've got some cotton in your yarn stash, you can make one in cotton, or you can go and grab some orange and green Scrub-ology and make one like this. All right. Now, again, as always, that crochet pattern is in the notes underneath this video, and it has pictures and notes and sizing and all the things that you might need or question on that blog link. What you're going to need to make our pumpkin patch scrubber is, of course, some scrubby yarn. This particular one was made using the Scrub-ology Scrub It from Yarn Bee in orange and green. And I really love, this is one of my favorite yarns for making scrubbies. Now, if you cannot get a hold of this yarn, or maybe it's just not your preference, you can use cotton yarn. I'm going to do the demonstration today using these 2, and you'll need to hold 2 strands of cotton together. All right. If you're using Scrub-ology Scrub It yarn from Yarn Bee, which is purchased at Hobby Lobby, you're going to need about 1.5 ounce, which is half a skein of each of these. So if you buy 2, you can make 2 of these scrubbies. All right. But again, for our demonstration, I'm going to use the cotton just because it's easier for you to see. And I'll be holding 2 strands of cotton together. And what I've done here is I've rolled some balls of yarn with the 2 strands together. That way I can just put it in my container that I have over here and work from there. All right, we're going to be stitching today with our J hook, which is a 6.0 millimeter crochet hook. You'll need a needle for weaving in ends, and then of course you'll need a pair of scissors. Now remember, you can use Scrub-ology yarn with 1 strand, or you can use any cotton yarn you have on hand that's a medium weight number 4, holding 2 strands of yarn together. So again, just a reminder, I'm using 2 strands of cotton of 2 different colors of green and orange for our demonstration. We're going to begin with our color 1, which is our green. We'll make a slip knot and chain 20. I have chained 20 chains, and we're going to begin by placing a single crochet in the 2nd chain from the hook. And then we'll stitch 1 single crochet in each of those chains, working all the way across. 1 single crochet in each of our chains across. So we chained 20, we placed a single crochet in the second chain from the hook, and then stitched a single crochet in each of our chains across. So we have 19 single crochets. We're going to chain 1 and turn. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch. It's merely a turning chain. Now I have my second color here all ready to go because we're going to be changing colors a lot across this row. So we're going to place a single crochet in the first 3, but on the end of the third one we're going to bring in our second color. Alright, so we'll place a single crochet in the first single crochet and then in the second. And now we're going to start our single crochet, so we'll bring up our loop and we're going to bring in our second color. All right, so now that we've brought in that second color, we're going to let those 2 strings droop there, and we're going to grab both of these. We're going to stitch the 2 double crochet or 2 triple crochet cluster. So we'll put 2 wraps on our hook. We're going to go in this next stitch, and you'll notice I'm stitching around that green yarn. I'm using 2 strands. I'm going to make sure I grab both those strands. You have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over and go through the second 2. Now don't finish this yet. We're going to put 2 loops on our hook again and go in that same stitch and pull up a loop. Yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over and go through the second 2. Now you have 3 loops on your hook. We're going to drop the orange one and bring back in the green and pull that all the way through those 3 loops, just like that. All right, so now what we're going to do is we'll pull those across. We're going to push that forward, go right in that next stitch with our green and stitch a single crochet. And again, you'll notice that I'm stitching over the orange one. Push that forward, that's your pumpkin. So there's 1, we're going to stitch another single crochet. Then we'll go to stitch another single crochet, but we won't finish it. We'll grab that orange and pull that through. And now we're going to stitch a 2 triple cluster. All right. And I'm using 2 strands, so I got to make sure I get both those strands. This is why I wanted to show you using the cotton instead of the scrubby, because the scrubby is a little bit chunky and a little bit hard to work with until you're used to it. All right, so there's my 2 triples, and there's where we changed colors. We're going to drop the orange, grab that green, and finish off that cluster. And I always push that forward with my finger. I want that pumpkin to stick forward. All right, so then we'll go in our next stitch and stitch a single crochet. And that's what makes those little pumpkins. All right, so we'll continue this across. 1, 2 single crochet. Then we'll stitch our 3rd single crochet and finish it with the orange color. Our 2 triple cluster. Grab that green yarn and pull that through and stitch 1 single crochet in the next 3. You will notice your yarn might get a little bit twisty, and that's why I like to use these balls of yarn, roll it up, because I can just unroll those balls, because you're switching colors a lot and your yarns might get just a little bit twisty. All right, so there's 1, 2, 3, change to our orange, the 2 triple cluster, change back to our green, and then we have 3 single crochets left. We'll drop that orange. These last 3 we're not going to stitch over that orange yarn. 1, 2, and 3, and we'll go ahead and chain 1. All right, now this is how it looks on the front. If they're not sticking out enough, just take your finger and poke them forward. That's going to make those bumps pop, look like pumpkins. All right, let's look at the back. It's nice and neat because we stitched over our orange in between, and we stitched over our green in between, or in the pumpkins. So it's going to stay nice and neat. All right, we dropped our orange here, and then we stitched those 3 single crochets. So we have 4 pumpkins with 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 double crochet or single crochet. Sorry about that. 15 single crochets. So row 3 is going to be super easy. We've chained 1. We're going to turn our work, and I always flip that orange one string out of the way like that. We chained 1. Chain 1 is merely a turning chain. So we're going to stitch a single crochet in the first 3. 1, 2, and when we go to do that third one, I'm going to put my orange over there because I want to stitch over that orange, because now we're going to stitch over it going back this direction. All right, we're going to place a single crochet in the top of that 2 triple cluster, and then 1 single crochet into 3 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, and you can see I am stitching over that orange tail of yarn. We're going to stitch a single crochet in the top of that cluster, and then 1 single crochet in those 3 single crochets. And so this row, we're just stitching single crochets across. I always kind of give this just a little bit of a tug, not real hard, and it keeps it nice and straight and not droopy. You're going to see it through just a little bit, but you want to try to hide it as much as possible. Whoops, I lost my strand, so let's go back and do that again. There we go. When you're working with 2 strands, it can be a little bit droopy, but I wanted you to have an alternative if you didn't really care for the other scrubby yarn, and that's okay. If it's not your favorite yarn or you don't really care for it, it's all right. Now this is coming out a little bit. I want to pull that down because we're going to weave that in later. All right, so now we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in these last 3. So we grabbed the orange yarn back here where our last pumpkin was on that row, and then we carried the yarn all the way across, and then we dropped it here at this pumpkin and stitched those last 3 single crochets without that orange pumpkin yarn. Chain 1, and now we're going to turn our work over so you can see how it looks on the front. And so really we just stitched a row of single crochets across that row. Now for row 4, we're going to just repeat what we did on row 2. All right, so we chained 1 and turned, 1 single crochet in the first 3, And at the end of that third one, we're going to finish with our orange. We're going to stitch the 2 triple cluster in the next stitch. We'll finish with our green and then stitch 1 single crochet in the next 3. We'll push that pumpkin forward. And we'll finish with the orange on that 3rd single crochet and stitch a 2 triple cluster for our pumpkin. Finish with the green. Oops. The orange. I'm trying to keep the orange snug because we don't want it to get droopy as we're stitching over it. Alrighty. Once you learn how to change colors and do the 2 triple cluster, it really is quite simple. And you can always practice, make a couple of swatches, with just some of your leftover yarns, just to practice and get used to it before you actually do one if you want to. And I do that a lot of times when I'm learning a new stitch or stitch pattern. All right, so here's my last 2 triple cluster. And then I'm just going to stitch 1 single crochet in the last 3. I'm going to drop that orange. 1, 2, and 3. And chain 1. Take my finger and push those pumpkins forward. And there's our second row of pumpkins. So now what we're going to do for row 5 is we're going to turn our work. Again, I'm going to move that orange one out of my way, that orange yarn. Chain 1 does not count as a stitch, so we'll single crochet in those first 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to grab that orange because I want to stitch over it. There we go. And now we'll just bring it along with us and stitch over it across this row. So I'll place a single crochet in the top of that 2 triple cluster and then 1 single crochet in the next 3. 1, 2, 3, 1 in the next, then 1 in the next 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 in the next 3, 1 in the next 2 triple cluster. Alrighty, 1 in the next 3, 1, 2, 3. There we go. 1 in the next cluster. Now we're going to drop our orange and then 1 single crochet in the next 3. Chain 1 and turn. Isn't that so cute? Now that you've practiced, you know what to do, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to repeat row 2, which is our pumpkin row, and then row 3, which is our row of single crochets across. And we're going to continue to repeat this 4 more times so that you have 6 rows of pumpkins. So repeat row 2 and row 3 4 more times. And if you want it longer, you can repeat that as many times as you want to. I stitched those 4 additional repeats of a row of our pumpkin row and a row of single crochet. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of pumpkins with the single crochet in between. And this brings us up to row 13. Now this is all the bigger I want my scrubby. If you want yours even longer, you can add as many more rows of repeat as you want to. And so now we're just going to do a really simple trim. We're going to do a row of single crochet all the way around with our color 2, and then we'll do another one all the way around with our color 1. All right, so I'm going to take the chain 1 out at the end of that row, and I'm going to bring in my orange. All right, we'll just let that green one drop. There we go. So we're going to start here and stitch a single crochet in each of those single crochets across. And when we get to this corner, we're going to stitch, and in each corner, a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. So I've stitched a single crochet in each of those stitches across the top. This brings me to the corner, and in this corner, I'm going to stitch a single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet. And then I'm going to evenly work down the side of my scrubby, stitching single crochets. And there is not a set number of single crochets that you need to have. You just want to make sure they're close together, but not too close and not too far apart. All right, and so I'm just going to continue this down the side. I'll stitch that single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, stitch across the bottom, repeat the side, and join back over here where we started. So I have stitched an even row of single crochet all the way around all 4 sides of my scrubby. The corners have a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in each of the corners. All right, I joined to my first single crochet, so I'm going to cut the orange or color 2, and we're going to bring in the green. Now don't worry about this because we'll stitch over that yarn line there when we come back around. All right, so we're going to chain 1 just to get us up here where we need to be. Make sure everything's snug down. And now all we're going to do is just stitch another row of single crochet. And we'll do the same thing. We'll stitch 1 single crochet in each of those single crochets around. And then in that chain 1 space in the corners, we'll stitch a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. And this is also going to help not only look cute, of course, this edge, but it's also going to help your scrubby keep its shape. Alrighty, so I'm just going to single crochet in each of the single crochets around, and then in that chain 1 space in those 4 corners, we'll stitch a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. So I've single crocheted all the way around, placing that single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in each of the 4 corners. Well, I haven't done the 3rd one yet, and that's because I wanted to show you. Remember I said there was a little bit of green there we wanted to stitch over? What you can do is as you're finishing up in these last few stitches, we're going to go in this chain 1 space, and I'm stitching over that yarn. That way it's not as noticeable. All right, there's my corner. I'm going to join to that first single crochet. We're going to cut our yarn, and then we're going to bring that to the back of our work. So we'll grab that loop, go to the back, and tie that off. Alrighty, isn't that neat? I'm going to turn it over. String there. Now I've weaved in most of my other ends, but I do need to weave these two ends in. But I do want to tell you about this yarn here. When you're working with this scrubby yarn, it's a little bit difficult to weave those ends in because you cannot go through the fibers of the yarn. So make sure you get behind those stitches and go back and forth. And I'll show you with this. All right, let's do this orange one. And this is the same way you would weave in for the scrubby yarn if you're using that. All right, so I'm putting my yarn on. I'm going to go underneath those stitches like that. And since I can't go through the fibers of the yarn on that scrubby yarn, I'm going to come forward and kind of come back the way that I came. So you're stitching over what you did, and that's going to help it stay a little bit more secure. Let me pull that one. It's kind of loopy there. All right, and this one's a little too short, so make sure you leave a little bit more yarn on your tail for weaving in on the scrubby yarn. That'll give you a little bit more to work with. You're going to go in those stitches, and again, we can't go through the fiber, so I kind of come up and then back and forth going through those stitches because we want that to stay secure. And that scrubby yarn can be thrown in the wash because I've done my other ones a bunch of times. All right, and then we can just clip those off. All right, so here are the two scrubbies made with two different fibers. This one is the scrubby yarn from Hobby Lobby, that Yarn Bee Scrub It, and I really like it. It's a nice and sturdy scrubby. But remember, it is polyester, and if it gets against something hot, like a hot pot out of the oven or something, it will melt a little bit. So this one is for washing the dishes or the bathtub, okay? Now this one, you'll notice it's a little bit shorter. We have the same amount of rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pumpkin rows, but it came out just a little bit smaller. And that's because even though you're using 2 strands of cotton to stitch it up, it's still going to be a little bit more compact, which if you want it to be more square, you can do a couple more rows to make it a little bit more square. That's totally up to you. One thing also about the one done in 100% cotton is it's not going to burn if you put a hot pot on it or use it as a hot pad because it's big and not big, it's thick and chunky and will work great as a hot pad or pot holder. So here's something that you can do. You can make a set. Make one that's a scrubby and one for pot holder. And of course I used a lighter green and a darker orange on this one, but you can try to match your colors and have a really fun set for fall and Thanksgiving and Halloween.